Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Well, it looks like the Russians found a way to hack the second half of the Super Bowl. I'm not kidding, folks. The left, if you know where to look, if you know how to read between the lines before the game, you can see that the left had all kinds of stuff tied up in this game. They wanted the Patriots to lose. They didn't want Brady to be the MVP because Brady and Belichick and Kraft are so tied to Trump. And I'm telling you, at halftime of that game last night, they thought it was 9 o'clock on election night. And Hillary Clinton was still going to win in a landslide. And the Atlanta Falcons are up 28-3 over the New England Patriots, and they're starting to celebrate. They're thinking they're going to get vindication, that Trump's going to be embarrassed, and that his stars and the Patriots are going to be humiliated by the team from Atlanta. And then they had to sit there and watch history repeat itself. In fact, you should have seen it over at Nate Silver's 538 blog. At halftime, Patriots have 1% chance of winning the game. Halfway through the third quarter, Nate Silver, 538, after the Patriots had to punt. And they were still down 28-3 midway through the third quarter. Patriots' chance of winning now down to 0.5%. And the same liberals who thought Hillary had it in the bag on election night thought that Trump was going to be eating excrement and the Patriots are going to be disappointing Trump and Trump disappointed them. And it was going to be almost, I mean, it wasn't going to salve the election defeat, but it was going to be a little bit of payback. And instead, on the pregame show, during the interview with Bill O'Reilly, Trump had predicted the Patriots a win by 8. I had predicted a Patriots win, and in parentheses, I said, and it could be a rout. And in the second half, it was a rout. And they're just beside themselves. It doesn't seem that Trump can lose. It doesn't seem that anything they do works. Investors Business Daily has a poll out. 51% back Trump's temporary ban on refugees. Look, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here because I've got a whole stack coming up on this, including who is the judge. This is so typical of the left. They highlight the fact that this Judge Robart, out in the state of Washington, is a George W. Bush appointee, as if to say, he's a Republican, man. He's a conservative, man, and he ruled against Trump because he knows Trump's a dictator. He knows Trump's an authority. Whoa, Judge Robart's not a Republican. Judge Robart is not a conservative. Judge Robart is a judge chosen by Patty, oh, mom in T-shirt, Patty Murray. You know, federal judgeships in the federal district courts, the way they are chosen is, I'll give you an example. My cousin Steve is a federal judge, and my uncle, his father, was a federal judge. He was appointed during the Reagan presidency, and Steve during the George W. Bush presidency. He's a federal judge in Missouri. And in order to get that done, they had to make a deal in the Senate that the post office or something in Washington be named after LBJ or some such thing. And in the state of Washington, in many cases, and there are actual full details on this, on how this happened, but they blue-slipped the opening of the district court judge in the state of Washington, and Patty Murray was able to finagle getting her judge because in many cases, senators from states, even if the opposite party, are given great deference in the establishment. This is many of the things that many people think wrong with the establishment, although some people probably don't think this is all that bad, but the way it worked in the establishment, let's say you're Bush, and there's a district court opening in the state of Washington. Well, the senators in states get the opportunity to recommend. In the case of federal judges, that's what begins the process. Senators recommend, and that's really tantamount to asking. And depending on the president and his people and what kind of curry their favor or what they need in another area, like, okay, if we give Patty Murray this judge, then what's she going to give us, or what are the Democrats going to give us somewhere else? And that's how this kind of horse trading worked. That's how this Judge Robart ended up a federal judge in the state of Washington. He's not a conservative. He's not a Gorsuch. He's not a Scalia. He's a full-fledged liberal. His ruling didn't even consider any opinions on the law. He basically said that, in his opinion, the president didn't have the right or the authority and wasn't making a smart move. So he stated. Now, the reason the left is going to delay Gorsuch, they can't stop him. And they're not really going to. They're going to delay him because, with the Supreme Court deadlocked at 4-4, this case, the Trump EO on the immigrant ban, is going to be decided by the Ninth Circuit. Because the way it works, the Ninth Circuit is where the briefs will be filed and the case argued. The Ninth Circuit is the most liberal appellate circuit in the country. So the odds are the Ninth Circuit will side with Judge Robart and continue the stay and issue a temporary injunction against Trump's executive order. Then it goes to the Supreme Court. Well, if they vote 4-4, that means the last decision reached is the one holds. So the Ninth Circus is going to be the focus of this. And in service of that, I'm way ahead of myself here. I have intended this to be the first segment in the next half hour. But since I'm in there, I'll go ahead and finish the thought. The way to legally approach this, in my humble opinion, is for the government's lawyers, for the DOJ, for Trump's people to go in there and say this has nothing to do about religion. I'll tell you where this thing's getting hung up. It's getting hung up because the left is hell-bent on stopping and resisting anything and everything Trump does. That's number one. Number two, what they think gives them moral authority here is that they remember Trump saying he was going to have a ban on Muslims. And so here comes Trump's executive order from these 7 countries that are almost entirely Muslim. And so they're out there and say, see, it's a Muslim ban, it's a religion ban, and we don't have religious tension. And Judge Robart fell for this. He wouldn't have had to fall for it. Judge Robart was going to do that. I mean, these people went to the state of Washington for a reason. State of Washington is California North. The way to argue this, and I don't know if there's anything they can do at the Ninth Circus, because the Ninth Circus is not going to decide this on the law. They're going to decide it on politics because the left has politicized everything, including the Super Bowl. Getting back to that in just a moment. The way to argue this is that Trump was not, the government is not thinking religion at all here. This is strictly national security. This is strictly common sense. This is strictly the commission of the enactment of a campaign promise to tighten the vetting process on refugees and immigrants to make sure the people who are permitted into the country are not problems. And just get it all off religion. Religion had nothing to do with this. This is purely national security, statistics, the history of violent protest uprisings and militant Islamic terrorism in the country to date. And that's the way to go about this. My humble light, I'm not a lawyer. My dad was a lawyer, but I'm not a lawyer. But it seems to me I am an astute analyst of politics. And this is a political case. It's not a legal case. And the left has made it a political case on purpose. And so we need to take back the politics aspect of this and turn it back into the legal concept that the Trump executive order actually is. Okay, more on that with added information and detail as the program unfolds. I think, folks, one addendum to this. I think something is subtly changing in the Trump administration. My take is that the president himself and others in his administration are surprised to an extent by the constant, never-ending violence. And it's not even protesting, it's rioting. And I really believe, let me rephrase it, I think that Trump really believed that after he won, that there would be a quieting or a lessening of this rioting and protesting. I really do. I think that he expected not complete total unity, but I think he expected that people would acknowledge that he won and be realistic about that. And I don't know if you'd say give him a chance or lay down arms or whatever. And I think they were surprised that the intensity of this increased. And now I think they're starting to get it. I think the Trump administration, maybe the president himself, starting to understand now the full-fledged nature of the opposition and their motivation and their purposes, and more importantly, that they are not going away, and that they can't be mollified, and that they can't be reached halfway, and that they can't be compromised with. They have to be defeated. Now, there are numerous pieces scattered throughout the media landscape today. Opinion pieces from some on the left. There's a Newsweek story by Michael Wolff. He's a media columnist. He thinks the media is blowing this sky high. He thinks it's obvious the media is out to get them. And he's a liberal. He's a left-wing drive-byer. He's very much alarmed by what he's seeing. He's even called out by name Brian Stelter at CNN. He told him to his face, "You guys are you're over the top here. You're hurting journalism. You've cast aside any aspect of journalism, and it's clear that your purpose is to take Trump out. Your purpose is to destroy his presidency. And if you guys continue to do this, you're going to only destroy yourselves." Then Douglas Schoen has a piece in the Wall Street Journal saying that this resistance is only going to worsen things for the Democrats. Then there's another piece. I think this is, John Fund? I think it's Fund at National Review. And his point is, and you'll love this, Snerdley, as an inside the Beltway aficionado, Fund says that as the left keeps this up, they're going to further estrange themselves from the nation's moderate voters. That moderate voters don't like this guy. Here it's being turned around, and now it used to be that moderates and independents, they didn't like it when the Republicans criticized Obama. But now John Fund says if these guys keep it up, that they're just going to marginalize themselves even further and make it more and more difficult for Democrats to win elections, because the Democrats have lost elections and lost seats and continue to, and still, what do they stand for? What was Hillary Clinton's campaign message? What was it? Trump is unfit, Trump is unsuited, and it's mine. I'm owed this. I mean, there was nothing. I mean, the whole modus operandi, the left thinking Hillary was owed, it was her turn, Trump's horrible. Other than that, there was no message. There was no, except for Obama. Obama supplied the message, actually. Obama was out there saying, you have to vote for her to continue to get all the greatness you got from me. And the people said, what? Greatness? No thanks. And it became reason to vote against her. So, and this intensity, by the way, of the protest, I'm going to tell you again, it's bought and paid for. They have established links, by the way, to George Soros and the Berkeley group. And yet, who is it? Robert B. Reich and others are now continuing to say that it was Breitbart that bought the protesters at Berkeley, bought the rioters, and gave them instructions and so forth. Either way, it is starting to dawn on Democrats that this, if it keeps up like this, is not going to help them, because it's not changing the minds of Trump voters. And that's the only way it would work, as if it were to change the minds of Trump voters, because what everybody even now is looking at is 2018. The Democrats have 25 seats to defend, and 10 of them, if things don't change from where they are now, are already lost, unless these 10 Democrat senators basically sign on with the Trump agenda. These are states that Trump won often in double digits. And if Trump is able to maintain positive approval numbers from a majority of Americans, and if his base holds, if the resistance, as they call themselves, if they're not able to soften Trump's support, they're in deep doo-doo. And that's, Trump, as I said last week on a couple occasions, that's really the only support Trump has, is those of you who voted for him, as opposed to other presidents. Let's look at Obama. Obama had Hollywood behind him, helping him, supporting him, Saturday Night Live and other media, pop culture. He had the media behind. Trump doesn't have any of that. Trump does not have, other than various areas of talk radio, me. He doesn't have the media. He doesn't have anybody in pop culture. He's got nobody. When I say helping him, I mean there's nobody lending support. It's his voters. So he has to make sure that his voters stay with him. And that's what the protest and the resistance is actually designed to do, as it always is. It's designed to weaken support for Trump. It's designed to scare Trump supporters. It's designed to make the Trump supporters think that really this is all an aberration, that they're not in the majority. Trump really didn't win. The Russians hacked. You know the drill. And so it's imperative that Trump supporters hang in with him. But it's on the other side of this. You're starting to see all of these professional political analysts on the left now starting to get it. And it's a whisper campaign right now. They're not full-throated about the dangers involved in this never-ending. I'll tell you something else about this. These prosecutions, there have been felony charges brought against many of these mobsters and rioters. Now, remember, the Republicans control most of the states, which means they control a legal process in most of the states, not including California, though. They've got to proceed. They have got to prosecute these felonies. They have got to prosecute and throw the book at people who have engaged in this kind of dangerous property destruction activity, injurious activity, and they've got to prosecute the full extent with full sentences and send a message. There has to be consequences, price to pay. Let me take a brief time out. We'll come back. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. My friends, a deeper analysis of the Super Bowl coming up in the next segment. But first, I need to tell you something that you're not going to see in the drive-by media, and it's huge. And in setting this up, I want to remind you why I have spent so much time on the whole subject of climate change and global warming throughout the entirety of this program, 29 years. It is because that issue, climate change, contains every element of extreme liberalism and socialism that needs to be understood and opposed. Climate change, if they succeed in this, climate change is close to healthcare in terms of if you get nationalized climate change, nationalized healthcare, then you are very close to totally controlling the way people live their lives. You have succeeded in restricting people's liberty and freedom in perhaps the greatest way you can. That's why climate change or global warming, whatever you want to call it, is of such paramount importance to me, because it's not just a single issue. It's every wet dream the left has encapsulated in an issue. It has government control. It has tax increases. It has the expansion of government. It has decisions and mandates of what kind of car you can and can't drive, what kind of food you can and can't eat, what you can do with your own private property. It would go a long way to eliminating the concept of private property. I mean, it's just horrible. And it turns out there's yet another scandal of totally faked data that was purposely made up and lied about right before the Paris Accords, that was designed to sway duped nations into spending, wasting millions of dollars in implementing policies designed to stop runaway temperature increases when there have not been any. And the fake data came from the United States. It came from the National Atmospheric Association, NOAA, the people that give you your weather forecasts. It was exposed by a whistleblower in the organization who had seen enough, a scientist named Bates, a Dr. Bates, and he had had his fill of the lies and the distortions. The Daily Mail on Sunday in the UK revealed a landmark paper exaggerated global warming. It was rushed through in time to influence the Paris Agreement. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration broke its own rules. We'll have details on this, too. Greetings and welcome back, El Rushbo. This, the most listened to radio talk show in the country. We've already spoken and said more in the first half hour of this program than you're going to get in many 3-hour programs today, radio or TV. And we're just getting warmed up. The Super Bowl. Remember now, folks, everything in America has been politicized. All you have, if you doubt me, look at the advertising in the Super Bowl. You had Audi and a couple of other outfits that were devoted to political issues in order to sell their products. A major miscalculation. And I know what happens. The media buyers and the creative people at both these companies and the advertising agencies are recent college graduates, mainly women, who are dyed-in-the-wool leftists and have their sway over the media buys and the direction of the ad campaign and so forth and so on. And I think it's all going to come back and bite these people in the end. But you don't even have to go to the advertising to find the politicization of the Super Bowl. Because if you knew where to look and if you knew what to watch, even before the game, you knew that many on the left were hoping for a New England Patriots defeat. They were hoping the Atlanta Falcons would wipe them out because the Patriots are reputedly and reportedly closely tied to the President of the United States. Tom Brady and Trump, supposedly good. Well, I know that they are. Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, and Trump, good friends. I know that they are. Belichick wrote Trump a congratulatory letter after Trump won the election and wrote admiringly of his steadfastness, his stick-to-itiveness, his persistence, and his unwillingness to give up. And so there was a lot riding on this for the left, for millions of football-hating leftists. And they are out there. The Super Bowl was to serve as a massive political cleansing. Political justice would be served. An election might not be reversed, but a statement would be made that the country had recognized that it made a mistake. The Patriots and Trump, who really aren't patriots, right, according to the left. The Patriots and therefore Trump would be crushed. And you know why? Because they deserved it. Why did the Patriots deserve to be crushed and Trump with them? Because their winning is an offense. There isn't supposed to be this kind of dominance in new America, not patriot kind of dominance. There isn't supposed to be this kind of heroism from the majority in America anymore. But they weren't going to leave it strictly to the Atlanta Falcons. No, there was eager anticipation for the halftime show of the noted song stylist Lady Gaga, about whom it was said prior to the game that she was going to diss Trump with a bunch of drones from high atop Energy Stadium in Houston. And she was going to tell the world what the left really thought of all of this. And she was going to do it in the midst of the halftime show, in song and in dance. And they were eagerly and breathlessly waiting. And Lady Gaga, in pre-Super Bowl interviews, did not disabuse them of the notion that she was locked and loaded and that she was going to come out firing and that she was going to let Trump have it. And the left was going to have a halftime orgasm because they were going to be able to pretend that they actually didn't lose. The Super Bowl, the most watched television event in the world, was going to feature Trump's team losing and therefore Trump losing. And Lady Gaga, well-known leftist song stylist, was going to smash Trump in the ground in the middle of the halftime show. And none of it happened. In fact, the parallels are eerie. 9 o'clock on election night, the Clinton campaign still thought that they were going to win in a landslide. 9 o'clock last night in the Super Bowl, the Patriots were down 28-3 and looked inept. Brady's passes were off target. When they were on target, his receivers couldn't hold the ball. He was sacked twice. It doesn't happen. The Patriots were playing a style of football that people haven't seen them play. People on the left were excited, thinking that their dreams were going to come true, that Brady was not only going to lose, he was going to look silly in the process, because, by extension, Trump was going to look like the fool, because Trump had gone out on a limb, making it known to everybody that he and the Patriots bigwigs are best buddies, inseparably good friends. And so when bad happens to the Patriots, the thing you have to remember is, in the final analysis, when everything's balanced out, nothing bad happens to Patriots, with a capital P or not. And so they were excited. And so people on the left that don't even understand football and just hate it because it's too violent, and because there's winners, and because there's losers. The young snowflakes that populate America's college campi, who care not a whit about the game and actually think it should not be played because it's so mean, it's so violent, it's just not, and then people lose. We're watching in eager anticipation for Donald Trump to take it on the chin by virtue of the New England Patriots being wiped out. And at halftime, it was just like election night. But then, about halfway through the third quarter, everything changed. You know when I knew, folks? Snerdley, you didn't watch, is that right? You did not watch this? You missed the Fox pregame show from 6 to 6:30. You missed something that I'm going to tell you that happened, and you're not going to believe it. Well, you'll believe it. Fox, the broadcast network, obviously intent on establishing deep contact with patriotic Americans. Fox wasn't going to be the architect or author of any division. They may not be able to control Gaga. They may not be able to control the outcome of the game, but the things they were in control of, there wasn't going to be any promotion of divisive issues. And yet, who did they bring out to read the preamble of the Declaration of Independence? None other than noted communist Harry Belafonte. And I'm sitting there, and I'm watching this, and they bring Harry Belafonte, and I'm saying, what in the world is this? Of all people, Harry Belafonte thinks Cuba is paradise on earth. Harry Belafonte is part of the Black Lives Matter organization, which this judge in Seattle, by the way, is very sympathetic to, by the way. And Harry Belafonte starts reading. This guy is a bigoted hate monger with a rich history of singing the praises of communism and bananas. And communist dictators. And somehow somebody thought this would help the country unify after Donald Trump supposedly divided it. And so they brought Belafonte out. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I expected him to change the words or to say he thought this was full of it. I thought, what a risk. The only saving grace was it was on tape. And then, after reading the preamble, he said that in 1974, the great American artist Johnny Cash wrote of our ragged old flag, ragged and old from the conflict and the suffering that came from our fight for freedom. Pride in our flag, freedom symbol, should now inspire us to keep striving to become a more perfect union through playing Johnny Cash tune. Ragged old flag. Yeah, because no one believes more deeply or represents more fully unity and freedom than Harry Belafonte. That was sarcasm for those of you in Rio Linda. The left began to realize it might not all work out the way they wanted when Lady Gaga did not utter a single word that could be even imagined or construed as critical of Donald Trump. Who? No, Jeremiah Wright was not on the show. But Lady Gaga, I have to say, it was a great halftime performance. And because of my hearing limitations, I'm not up to speed on 30-year-old song stylist superstars. But everything I'm reading about her performance today says she has reignited her career. I didn't know that it was being flushed. But they said, and it was overwhelmingly talented. It was well choreographed, and it was brought off without a hitch. It was really, and of course, everybody was waiting, for somewhere in the middle, like, Trump sucks, something like that. Didn't happen. And then the third quarter started, and you could sense it wasn't to be. I myself just, third quarter, when the Patriots' comeback began, the left realized it wasn't to be. Trump was not going to be humiliated. The Patriots were not going to get creamed. Trump was not going to be embarrassed. They were not going to be able to relive election night as a victory because the Patriots were coming back. And the Falcons, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'm the mayor of Realville. And I saw all of the reaction after the game. Greatest game ever. Oh, my God. I've never seen greatest comeback ever. Greatest game ever. It's going to go. I'm sorry. It was a fun game to watch. And the Patriots were overwhelming and coming back. But how can I have to take a break? As I said on Friday during my Super Bowl prediction, I pointed out that the one thing nobody can predict, and therefore you cannot account for, is momentum. It is impossible. It's impossible to predict who's going to come out with the momentum, who's got it when the game starts. It's impossible to predict when it's going to shift and why. NFL coaches get heart attacks and pull their hair out when momentum shifts. If they could control momentum shifts, they would never be fired. They would never lose their jobs. It's one of the intangibles that nobody can identify. But clearly the momentum shifted. I think I know when the momentum shifted in this game. The first big momentum shift. But you just can't make it happen. Atlanta had it the first half. And then it shifted. And then things that shouldn't happen, happen. And have a great comeback. Hollywood could not have written that game and this year and tied it to current events any better than reality did. But I have a problem with it depends on how you define great game. I don't know what happened to the Atlanta Falcons in the second half. I don't know. It looked to me like they went into a prevent offense, except that they didn't. A prevent offense meaning run out the clock, don't take any risks, think you got a big enough lead, and sit on it for the entire second half. That would be, and there is no, prevent defense is the term that's actually used, and that's a defense that will give up yards and yards and yards, but then tighten and not allow a touchdown. And the prevent defense prevents victory. It's amazing. The prevent defense is seldom successful. And I've coined the term prevent offense to describe an offense that thinks they've got the game in the bag and stops taking risks and stops being aggressive and tries to sit on the lead and run out the clock. Except the play calling for the Falcons, particularly in the fourth quarter, I don't understand it. So, folks, I don't know. I don't know if it was just momentum. I don't know if the Falcons were gassed. I don't know if they were just out of gas. I don't know if they choked. But blowing a 23-point lead in the Super Bowl. You know, I felt kind of like when the Cincinnati Bengals blew a playoff game to the Steelers, committing 30 yards of penalties during dead ball time. Now, this was not that, but, I mean, they didn't commit any dead ball penalties. There was not any bad sportsmanship. There was nothing like that, like in the Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game. But this, and I sent people a note. I said, in the third quarter when the Patriots scored their first, I said, this game is over. I can already tell you, this team, the Falcons, is doing dumb stuff. And I had people write me back, don't jinx it, don't jinx it. If you start saying that, if you start saying it's over, the Falcons are going to win. I said, no, they're not. It is over. Middle of third quarter. I have a witness. My wife, a Patriots fan, who nearly left the room in anger at me when I said that for jinxing the game. And she sought another TV to watch the rest of it. And then told me the rest, don't say anymore. And as the game progressed, said, don't be mad, babe. I was right. But I'm the husband. So really not right. But here's Robert, Waldorf, Maryland. Great to have you, sir, on the EIP Network. Hello.
How you hitting them, Rush?
Very good, sir. Thank you.
That's what I hear. Look, I've been sitting here last week, and I watched this sports media this morning, and I thought they were going to accuse the Russians and Trump of spiking out the Atlanta Falcons Gatorade at halftime. They've been flipping out so bad. Last week I sat and watched them. These guys have blatantly taken off their mask. Like you said, the sports media, I heard you say the sports media is no different than the other one. I mean, they flat out said the reason they couldn't stand the Patriots because they have too many white players. That white guys ain't supposed to be out on the field doing what they're doing.
Wait a minute. Where did you hear that? Who said that? Where was
there's two shows on ESPN. It was a conversation with Colin Cowherd, one of them was, and me and my wife sat here and we watched this, and I just looked at her. Wait a minute. Did somebody actually say the Patriots couldn't or shouldn't win because they got too many white guys? The reason that they despise and hate the Patriots is because the amount of white guys that they have on the field, and that the white guys on the field are not supposed to be. You know, the star quarterback, and they got those two little white wide receivers. I can see that could tick off some sports leftist media types. I wish I'd heard that when it happened. I didn't know, but thanks for the call out there, Robert. No, I had heard it. I'd read it myself. I didn't even give it the honor of mentioning it. But there's sports drive-bys all over the place. They were commenting on the racial makeup of the Patriots at skill positions and how that doesn't look like the NFL anymore. That's not right. Hi, folks. Back at it we are. You are tuned to the Rush Limbaugh program here on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. A delight to have you here. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eivnet.us. You know, I looked something up here during the break, top of the hour. NBC Sports. A few months ago, Bill Belichick has the NFL's least diverse coaching staff. That was the NBC Sports blog, Pro Football Talk. The piece was back in July. There have been complaints about the Patriots being too white since 2012, maybe even earlier. So I've heard this. I've heard it about the wide receivers for the Patriots. The fact that the skill set guys are white on the Patriots when they're not on most of the other teams. And it's the sports media making these comments. It's not players. It's the sports media, which is as every bit liberal as their brethren in the drive-by news media. And they may even be worse. They may actually be even worse in terms of liberalism and bias and just throwing all pretense of objectivity out the window. And with them, it is almost all race-based, almost entirely race-based, with the belief that it's still so out of balance, the discrimination and the I just want to read it in right. They say even worse.
And it's despicable and it's sickening. And I'll tell you, this Super Bowl, folks, for me, aside from all this that I've said, was what was the least anticipated. I played golf yesterday. I never do that on Super Bowl Sunday. I played golf. I got home at 5 o'clock, an hour and a half before the game started, and I just made it to the TV for the pregame stuff around 6 or 6:15. And I don't know what it is. I've asked myself, I'm just getting older, and because of my age, the players are no longer these superstar, unreachable people on pedestals, or is it a combination of the way the game is reported on now? It's been so politicized by the media, and now the all-out effort to damage and injure the game by convincing parents that their kids shouldn't play. It's probably a cumulative effect of things. And I said, is it maybe I don't like these teams, or maybe I'm not crazy about these two teams? I don't know what it was. But I'll tell you, I played golf on more NFL Sundays this year than ever. And it wasn't maybe last year, certainly the year before, that on Sunday, everybody knew I didn't play golf. I'm totally NFL, all day, all night Sunday. Not this year. Don't know why. Didn't get into deep analysis of it, but anyway, congratulations to the Patriots. It was a heck of a comeback, despite the fact that the Falcons, I don't know where they were. As I said, I don't know if they're out of gas. I don't know if they were overcome by just lack of experience, not being in the big game before, thinking they had it won and they're going to sit on the lead. I don't know. They probably don't either. That's an old thing about momentum. You just don't know. Let's move on to some other things here, folks, because there's all kinds. I want to touch on some things. We're going to then go back to, like, the court ruling on the executive order, get into some detail about the judge, and some of the other aspects of this. I saw this headline. I was out playing golf yesterday. I saw this. It's a Wall Street Journal story. Senate Republican leader McConnell distances himself from Trump stances. Wall Street Journal, leader of the Senate Republicans, distanced himself from President Trump Sunday, disagreeing on issues involving Russia, the judiciary, and alleged voter fraud. McConnell was pressed on CNN about Trump's recent statements and repeatedly said he disagreed with them. Now, one of the things that Trump's really being ripped over the coals for, Trump did his interview with O'Reilly for the Super. You know when that interview was done? Friday. Did the interview in the White House on Friday. I know most people think those interviews are live, with the president taking time out from his Super Bowl party in the White House. But Trump was here over the weekend, so that interview took place on Friday. And Trump was being queried about Putin. And so Bill O'Reilly said, Putin's a killer. And Trump said, well, we're not so filled with innocent people ourselves. And the roof blew. You would have thought that Barack Obama was back, except when Obama said stuff like that, nobody cared. And so now the same people who covered for Obama, the same people, what Obama was doing worse than that. Obama was out apologizing for America. Obama was admitting to the Chinese that we really shouldn't be lecturing you Chi-Coms on civil rights violations because, man, do we have a history of it ourselves. Remember that? There were frequent examples with Obama, even when it came to immigration, telling other nations, well, we haven't been perfect in this area, so we're not going to preach to you. With Iran and the nuke deal, Obama was saying, well, imagine what would have happened if somebody told us we couldn't have nukes. There was always a moral equivalence, and when Obama did it, the United States was always guilty. The United States always had some explaining to do. So Trump comes off with one of these off the wall or maybe spur of the moment comments. So Riley says, well, Putin's a killer. And Trump says whatever he said about, well, we have our share of those kinds of people too. And everybody is just blowing a gasket. And now you got right-wing commentators and analysts wondering if Trump even understands American exceptionalism or believes in American exceptionalism. You have others, Pelosi's out there saying, I want to know what Putin has on Trump. That's the only thing that can explain this. I want to know what Putin has on Trump. I don't pretend, folks, to be able to explain to you what Trump's attitude toward Putin is and why there is this unwillingness to categorize Putin in the ways that most people actually view Putin. I have no idea what it is, but I don't think it's going to be long until we find out. But I need to ask somebody a serious question. After you've listened to this campaign, you paid attention to the campaign, and you saw Trump rally after Trump rally where all he did was stand up for this country. All he did, time after time after time, was talk about his effort to make America great again. And it's clear that he thinks America lost ground in competition with foreign countries, trade deals, jobs, economics. But how anybody can then, after hearing Trump promise to work so hard and to tell people you're going to get so tired of the winning because we're going to start winning again, our country's going to start winning, then Trump has one of these comments, well, we have our killers too, or I forget the exact quote, whatever it was. And to take that to mean that Trump doesn't understand American exceptionalism and doesn't believe in it, when Obama got a pass, routine pass, numerous times, for saying things much worse than that. I don't know what Trump meant by it. I don't know why he felt the need to defend, if that's what he was doing, he was defending Putin under the blithering assault of Bill O'Reilly and calling him a killer. But now guess what? Putin is demanding an apology from Fox News. Did he threaten to sue? Or is he just demanding an apology? Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if Putin sued Fox News for defamation? O'Reilly. Folks, I promise we'll get to the bottom of this and find out what this is all about. But this business with McConnell, this is something that I have known, I'm sure you have too, that just because Trump won the election doesn't mean all these Republicans in the leadership are on his side. I mean, many of them are just waiting for what they consider to be the best opportunity that will present itself for them to distance themselves from him. And these are establishment guys. And it's kind of like when Reagan won in 1980. He was not popular with the Republican establishment until he won. And he won with 49 states. There was no question about it. So the Republican establishment, they had to grit their teeth and bite the bullet and sign on and get on board. But privately, they were never happy about it because of conservatism. Reagan was anti-establishment too. The establishment hangs together. Trump's anti-establishment. And all members of the Republican, Democrat, all members are first and foremost devoted to making sure nothing happens to them and their world and their establishment. So the Republicans live in a never-ending fear of what the media says because they believe that a majority of Americans are going to believe what the media says because that's their experience with it. So it's a combination of self-preservation, but just keep a sharp eye on this. McConnell poured cold water on the pledge by Trump to launch a national investigation of voter fraud. The president has claimed without evidence that millions of people voted fraudulently in the presidential election. This is a Wall Street Journal story, so keep a sharp eye on that. Here's the Sky News report on the the Trump-Putin dust-up. Bill O'Reilly used the word killer while pressing Trump on whether he thought he would get along with Putin. O'Reilly said, Putin's a killer. Trump said there's a lot of killers. we've got a lot of killers. What? You think our country's so innocent? That's what set off the fire alarms. You think our country's so innocent? No. Don't misunderstand. I can totally understand people reacting to that. My question is, where was the reaction when Obama was doing that and worse? You know, when Obama was out there establishing that America was guilty, that America's superpower status wasn't really deserved, that the world was out of balance when we, the United States, were the lone superpower in the world. And when Obama belittled American exceptionalism. Well, you know, I bet in Denmark, they think they're pretty exceptional too. And in Yemen, even in Yemen, they think they're pretty exceptional too. I mean, it was obviously a put down of the whole concept of American exceptionalism, which these people think is us saying we're better people. And that's not at all what American exceptionalism is. American exceptionalism happens to, it's actually the root of the word. We are the exception to the way most people have had to live. Human beings, since the beginning of time, have lived in bondage, servitude, authoritarian dictators, political prisoners, in dungeons, in poverty. I mean, dire poverty. The human condition since human life began has been, for the vast majority of people, real suffering. The United States comes along and all of that changes. That's American exceptionalism. Not that we're better than any, but Obama heard that as us saying we're better people. No, that's not right. We're not better. In fact, we're worse because we've had our past. It was convoluted, but nobody ever hopped on Obama. Of course, nobody ever harped on it for anything. We all know why. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said, "We consider such words from the Fox TV company to be unacceptable and insulting, and honestly speaking, we would prefer to get an apology from such a respected TV company." Do you know that liberals are in a state of outrage over the fact that professional attire is expected again at the White House? Washington Free Beacon, liberals are outraged across the world because employees are expected to dress professionally in the White House. Donald Trump has angered feminists all over again, this time for comments he did not make. The outrage originated from an Axios report on Thursday that quoted an unnamed source who claimed to have worked for the Trump campaign, who said, quote, "Trump likes the women who work for him to dress like women. Even if you're in jeans, you need to look neat and orderly," the source added. "Men also should be sharply dressed." Trump never said it. Do you know what Axios is? Axios is a new website started by the founder of the Politico. And it supposedly is a new concept in news. They do the news, and then they take a paragraph every now and then to say what it means. And they go maybe 4 or 5 what it means paragraphs throughout each story. Axios, A-X-I-O-S, right, Axios. So the women of the world are angry because Trump supposedly said that women who work in the White House are supposed to dress like women. That's supposedly anti-woman. It is anti-feminist. But he never said it. Fake news. Dozens of outlets from Australia to Ireland celebrated women who took to Twitter to express their displeasure with Trump over the anonymous comment that women can wear jeans at work. Users began using the hashtag #DressLikeAWoman to show that many women wear uniforms at their jobs, as do fictional characters. I mean, it was much ado about literally nothing. The outrage on the left, pent up and otherwise. The question, how long can it go on? For how long can this kind of emotional immaturity be sustained? And the question is, for how long will somebody pay for it? Because it's bought and paid for. Anyway, let's take a break. Must do it now. I'll be back here in just a second. Okay, having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have is a great piece. I'm happy to see this. I love it when other people join my parade. And Kurt Schlichter at townhall.com, finally somebody picking up on the notion of who the left is. And he said, the left hates you. Act accordingly. They hate you. And he goes on to sing my mantra. They must be defeated. Something Republicans don't get. Otherwise, McConnell would not be saying what he's saying. If people understood that the objective is to defeat these people and not get along with them and not compromise, because you can't. They hate us. It's irrational. It's a waste of time to make them like us, to try to. Anyway, more on that as the program unfolds. This is Gloria in Aptos, California. Hi, I'm glad you called.
Good morning, Rush. Thank you very much for taking my call. I'm very honored to be talking to you.
Thank you.
Just wanted to call to let you know I'm a 66-year-old Hispanic woman who you have turned my world around.
Wow.
I mean, I've been unemployed since the end of last year, and I listen to you all the time, and I just want to thank you for simplifying everything that's going on around us. And I wanted to also make a comment about the Patriots, that you were talking earlier about how they were saying they have a 1% chance of winning, and then they have a 0.5% chance of winning, and then they turned around and kicked butt, just like Trump did in the election. So I just wanted to call and say thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. The fact that you said that I've made this understandable for you, because that's one of my objectives. When I say that I try to make the complex understandable, I mean it. I'm not just trying to turn a phrase. And I really appreciate you saying that. It encourages me to continue. Because, at this stage, I don't get much feedback, folks. I get hardly any, other than from callers who call things. No, that's not a complaint. I'm just telling you. And after 29 years, what feedback do you need? What are you, insecure? No. I just that's how much I appreciate her saying so. You always want to know that it works specifically. Beyond having good ratings, good numbers, unlike Schwarzenegger, you want to have good ratings and high numbers, and you want to know that the techniques and the objectives are working. So I really appreciate that, Gloria. Thanks very much. That whole 0.5% chance to win, 1% chance to win, it was ridiculous on election night. 2. All right, Kurt Schlichter, townhall.com. The left hates you. Act accordingly. There are times when I feel like and I don't listen to other people that do this, folks, and I've mentioned this for years and years as to why, because I don't want to inadvertently hear and say and repeat what others have said. It's a desire to always be, quote unquote, original. So there are probably others that sing the same tune, but I'm just happy to see it here in Town Hall, because I think this is fundamentally important. Who the left is. Who are these people on the riotous protest march? Who are these people marching every day, even after what they're upset about? This travel ban. The judge in state Washington, puts a temporary stay on it. Okay, isn't that the equivalent of mission accomplished? Okay, go home. No, they're still in the streets. They're still mad. They're still carrying signs made up that morning. They're still running around engaging in property damage. Why? They just won. Maybe if it's temporary, but they just won. But they're still out protesting what has been stopped. And it ought to open everybody up as to what's going on. We now know for a fact that when JFK and LAX and all these airports on that Saturday, when Trump first put that ban in, those airports were filled in 10 minutes. And we came to find out that the protesters had been organized since November. They had registered, they were paid, they'd signed up, they'd been given the signs to make and print, and maybe shown where to go to get them, and they were just waiting for the marching orders. They were waiting for the first thing that Trump did to mobilize. That happened to be it, and there they were. Now, the media makes it look like it's spontaneous and organic, and the media make it look like everybody agrees with this, that everybody's on the same page here, and that's for psychological reasons. And in years past, the Republicans have always fallen for this stuff And it's succeeded in making Republicans modify their views, modify their behavior, dial back their opposition, or what have you, under the mistaken belief that there's common ground to be found with these people, that there's a level of outreach that we can engage in, and that we can find cooperation, and we can work together to make Washington work, and all this happy razzmatazz. And it's not possible, because that's not what these people are doing. They're not seeking grievance for the sake of redressing an issue. They are trying to shut down what won. They are trying to eliminate any opposition. There isn't any desire to get part of what they want with compromise. They are all about overthrowing because they lost. Let me give you some pull quotes here from Mr. Eichenwald. They are fanatics, and by not surrendering, by not kneeling, and by not obeying, you have committed an unpardonable sin. You have defied the left, and you must be broken. They will take your job. They will slander your name. They will beat or even kill you, whatever it takes to break you and terrify others by making you an example. Your defiance cannot stand. They cannot allow this whole Trump GOP majority thing to get out of control. They must crush this rebellion of the normal. And absolutely nothing is off the table. Right on, right on. They must crush this rebellion of the normal. I have a different term for it. It is the reclamation of our country. Our country was headed down the tubes. It was in the midst of a transformation to make it into something we were never founded to be. That was the Obama objective. That's the objective of the far left, not just here but around the world. This election is traditional Americans attempting to reclaim their country. Good old American values, time and true, honored since our founding. There's a lot going on here with this election. There's a lot that's unstated and unspoken still because of the fear of what will happen to you, because it'll all be said to be in violation of political correctness. So the only thing people can do to express their disgust and their desires is to show up and vote, and they did, and the left lost. And the left has been losing big at the ballot box in this country since 2010. They're beside themselves. And so rather than realize that they might have to make some changes and modifications to win back the sympathies and the support of the American people, that's not at all what they're about. They're about beating their opponents into the dust. They're not about compromise. They're not about change. They're not about working together, crossing the aisle, or any of that happy razzmatazz. They are about destroying the opposition. And Mr. Eichenwald here, they must crush this rebellion of the normal. Those, you let certain leftists run across that phrase and there's going to be hell to pay. Because in their, what they think is that there's a normal America that's typified and represented by the majority, and then the oddballs and the kooks and the freaks. And the kooks and the freaks and the oddballs are tired of being kooks, oddballs, and freaks. They want the way they are, the things they believe, to become what is normal. And there is a resistance to that as normal, and that's what the election was about in part. So the left, look at this as a rebellion of the normal, and it cannot be allowed to grow. It cannot be allowed to be planted and blossom. Now, the left will never say these things out loud, but make no mistake, if violence is what it takes for the left to prevail, then violence we will have. You saw it. You were meant to see it. Berkeley was a message about the price of dissent where leftists hold sway. In other words, they own Berkeley. They own California. You dare to send a conservative in there to see what he thinks, this is what's going to happen to you. There's no tolerance. There's no free speech. There's no openness. There's nothing except you aren't permitted. You aren't welcome because you are hated. We, folks, are hated. We are despised, even though we're not known personally. We are hated and despised. Now, Mr. Schleister says here, the first step, for those of you who haven't yet full-fledged admitted this, End the denial. Open your eyes. See what is happening. Do not allow yourself to be deluded by false nostalgia for a past period of cultural peace that only existed because of the time the left was winning. They hate you. Look at Twitter. Look at Facebook. Try and tell yourself that leftists are just nice people that disagree with you on a few details, and you'll forever be deluding yourself. Stop. Stop deluding yourself. Stop fooling yourself. Understand that this must get much worse before it's going to get better. We may wish to stop the cultural, political struggle, but they can't. The left can't. Theirs is a religion. Norman Podhoretz said something once, actually wrote this in a column and in a book. He's Jewish, conservative Jew, and he's forever being bombarded with the question, how can Jewish people be liberal with what's happening to Jews all over the world with anti-Semitism? How can they be anti-Israel? How can liberal Jews be pro-Palestinian, for example? And Norman Podhoretz said, they're liberals, they're not Jews. Liberalism is their religion, not Judaism. Judaism is their tribal identification, but liberalism is their religion. And he's right. Their religion, the left's religion, tells them that we are all those isms and ists. Racist, sexist, homophobic, greedy. We hate science. We're deniers. Some of us even love Hitler, they say. How could they tolerate us? How could they ever allow us power if we are that embodiment of evil? They can't. They are sick. Their ideology is sick. Their false theology requires that we be eliminated, enslaved, made irrelevant, what have you. We cannot be tolerated. We certainly can't be allowed to hold the reins of power. Mr. Schleister writes, I hope that my novel People's Republic about what lies at the bottom of this blood-soaked, slippery slope would be rendered moot by the GOP's victory in November. I was wrong. The left has redoubled its efforts. They hate us. And however they come at us, we need to be prepared to fight. I'm going to tell you, he's exactly right. He is exactly right. There are those in power in Washington who really believed that much, not all, but much of this discord and disunity would dissolve after the election, even if Trump won, that they would concede the fight. And the fact that they're doubling down has come as a shock to many, not to me, and it's distressing to me that it's come as a shock. It isn't personal. You know, I realize you win an election and you run on unifying and making America great, and you think that, okay, let's go. Let's all make America great. These people that don't give America never has been great to them. America's never been anything but flawed. Anyway, you know the drill. I just wanted to call Mr. Schleister's piece out to you because it's welcome, very much so. We're going to come right back. Don't go away, folks. I'm told that I had an episode of verbal dyslexia during that last little bit. I called Mr. Schleister Eichenwald once. Kurt Eichenwald is a rabid leftist out of his mind writer at Newsweek, and whoever else will take him. Kurt Schleister, town hall, he's the lawyer who crushed the Clock Boy libel suit. Did you hear about that? You remember Clock Boy, the kid in Dallas who Ahmed Eichenwald? Yeah, he Ahmed Eichenwald. He made a bomb or a timer mechanism to a bomb and won a science project. It was heralded as one of the greatest things of all time. It was the cheapest piece. And when he was denigrated for what he sued, or his dad sued for defamation or what, and he just got smoked. And it was Kurt Schleister who ran the case. Here is Rich, Brunswick, Ohio. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hi, thank you, sir. Have a good day.
You bet.
Hey, I got a question for you. I also got a comment regarding Rush Revere. But to my question, seeing how crucial that one play was with that pass that almost touched the ground and where they had to verify or validate it using the cameras, whose cameras are being used for the referees to validate calls like that? Is it the broadcasters, or does the NFL have their own cameras?
No, those are all the network cameras. At best, look, this used to be a slam dunk. I used to know this question because it was always the network cameras that were granted permission by the NFL. They're not the same at every game because the networks have different budgets. You know, for a game, it's going to go to 10% of the country. They won't use as many cameras. The NFL does not move in and use camera locations that the network doesn't provide in those cases. So I think every camera at the Super Bowl yesterday was a Fox camera. Now, I say that with the asking permission because it's a Super Bowl, I might be wrong. Maybe the league does provide some cameras, but I don't think so. Why does it matter to you? What is the point if they do?
Well, just from a number of camera standpoints, I imagine Fox probably had at least a dozen to 18 cameras out there on that field yesterday or around the field.
Oh, they had more than that.
See, that's why I'm wondering, who did the refs defer to?
Wonder who the refs defer. Oh, the refs are deferring to the replay official in New York and on the sideline.
Who's looking at whose cameras?
Fox's cameras.
Okay,
they're looking at every replay you see. They don't have a review. They don't have an angle that you're not shown on TV. Well, wait a minute now. That's not the networks try to show you every angle they have of a play, and they may not show you one that is inconclusive, but the league has access to all of them. But they're network cameras. I get what's going on here. I know exactly. Well, was the league maybe trying to cheat one of the two teams? Is the league, if it's their cameras, can they have one not work at a crucial time? Something like that. No, these are network cameras, I'm pretty sure. We have a caller waiting on hold here. I'm glad this guy called. His name is Eric in Michigan. We have time to get to him now, but his point is going to be Tom Brady is the epitome of what America is. Yeah, and that doesn't sit well. I'm sorry, folks, it does not sit well with the American left. Tom Brady is what they're trying to erase. Ha! Welcome back. Rush Limbaugh having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Our telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, to the global warming hoax. I want to remind you that Donald Trump is ridiculed to this day for claiming, and all my little buddies on their tech blogs and many places on the left still ridicule Trump for claiming that global warming is a hoax started by the Chi-Coms to make American businesses uncompetitive. Now, global warming is a hoax. It is a hoax perpetrated on an unsuspecting population of the world who have been blamed for doing great damage to our climate. Through no fault of their own. They were lied to by the oil companies. They were lied to by Republicans and lied to by conservatives and lied to by evil capitalist companies. And by all of this progress and living the lives the way they have been destroying climate by creating all of this pollution. This CO2 is pollution. Stuff that you exhale is pollution. Barbecue pits and driving around your SUVs, and so there's a greenhouse gas. The earth is broiling. The earth is going to be habitable in another 35 years. But there is redemption. And that is if you let government take over and if you stop driving these behemoth cars and let government tell you what kind of car to drive, stop eating Big Macs and beef and all this other stuff, and agree to tax increases and globalization, let the United Nations basically determine how nations can function, then you can redeem yourself. And for every Prius you see on the road, for the most part, not all, but for the most, you see a dupe. You see somebody who actually thinks they're saving the planet, doing good. Everybody wants their lives to have meaning. And if you can save the planet, man, can you feel proud of yourself. You can feel like your life has meaning. So you go out, you buy an electric car, or you keep your thermostat at 79 or 80 in the summer, and at 65 and when you sweat your butt off, and then you freeze, and you're saving the planet and all that. It's bohunk. We don't have the power to stop climate change, which means we don't have the power to affect it at all. We can't stop it. Lord knows we've been trying. Anyway, the point of all this is that there's enough clear evidence out there that it is a hoax, that data is faked, that data is forged. But the drive-bys will not believe it because it's a leftist cause, folks. The reason that I'm so devoted to explaining this issue over and over is because it contains practically every aspect of liberalism that is dangerous. That's why it is a seminal issue to the left. Everything they want is wrapped up in it. Every bit of power, every bit of control. You couple climate change and healthcare, and freedom as you have known it ceases to exist. It is that evil, and it is that dangerous. And I'm gratified. Most polling data today shows that we're nowhere near a majority of Americans who accept it or believe it or even consider it to be crucial. Doesn't stop the media from portraying it as an issue that all the right people agree with, that all the smart people agree on. But if you don't see this, then you're a denier, you're a kook, you're a equivalent to people who didn't admit the Holocaust and so forth. The first substantive indication we had that this stuff is all faked and phonied up was a hack of an email server at the University of East Anglia in the UK, in which somebody, and the whistleblower there was somebody within the climate change movement, the so-called scientific movement. By the way, there's another reason. It's real simple how this is not science. All you have to hear them say, a consensus of scientists agree. There is no consensus in science. Science is not a democratic thing. It doesn't get a vote. If a consensus of scientists think the earth is flat, for example, it doesn't make the earth flat. There is no vote. A consensus of scientists doesn't mean anything. In this issue, it means that they found all the scientists who are being paid via the grant process to produce research that the sponsors want, and they get their consensus. Al Gore has become filthy rich off of this hoax. The emails at East Anglia indicated, emails from scientist to scientist, back and forth, indicated and illustrated how they were changing and faking data from the medieval period. They have to show throughout history temperatures much lower than today in order to make people believe that there's an unstoppable warming going on that can be tied to industrialization. You go back to the medieval period when we didn't have any industrialization at all. There were no fossil fuels, for example. So the only thing putting CO2 in the atmosphere was cows via methane and humans exhaling. But aside from that, until the railroads came along and the industrialization, smokestacks, factories, and this kind. So they want to try to tie this unstoppable, dangerous warming to the invention of the combustible fuel engine and progress related to that as a means of indicting capitalism. Climate change is basically an anti-capitalist, pro-communist enterprise. Trump says Chi-Com's created it to make American companies uncompetitive. It would make American companies uncompetitive if we ever did have to make changes that the United Nations and others decree in their climate accords. We would become uncompetitive if the other nations of the world refuse to play along, which China said they never will play along. But it's whether it's a Chinese hoax or not, it's a liberal hoax. and there are liberals in China. But the latest news is just another blockbuster. And you will not see it. You haven't seen it yet. I doubt you will see it. I know you won't see this in the New York Times. And therefore, my little tech blogger buddies will never see this. You won't see it at BuzzFeed, which means my tech blogger buddies will not see it. You will not see this in the Washington Post. You won't see it on ABC, CBS, NBC. In the Sunday edition of the UK Daily Mail, headline exposed how world leaders were duped into investing billions of dollars over manipulated global warming data. The Mail on Sunday can reveal a landmark paper, Exaggerated Global Warming. It was rushed through in time to influence the Paris Agreement on climate change. America's National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration broke its own rules. In other words, the culprit in the latest exposing of the hoax is NOAA. They run all the weather satellites, supposedly collecting all the temperature data. The report claimed that the pause in global warming never existed, but that it was based on misleading, unverified data. The problem these people are all having is there hasn't been any warming in the last 15 to 18 years. Actually, that even to say that gives their existence some credence. But it has to be done to illustrate this. There hasn't been any warming. Their climate models said that by now temperatures would be X degree warmer and sea levels would be X centimeters higher. None of it's happened. And so they have to come up with an excuse for it. They have to come up with a reason for the pause in the warming. The Mail on Sunday revealed astonishing evidence that the organization that's the world's leading source of climate data, which is NOAA, rushed to publish a landmark paper that exaggerated global warming and was timed to influence the historic Paris Agreement on climate change. A high-level whistleblower told the Daily Mail, this is an American scientist, his name is Bates, he works at NOAA, and he's fed up seeing what he's seen. He told the UK Daily Mail that NOAA breached its own rules on scientific integrity when it published the sensational but flawed report aimed at making the maximum possible impact on world leaders, including Obama and the UK's David Cameron at the UN Climate Conference in Paris in 2015, which, by the way, Trump says we're pulling out of and we're not going to live by, and thank goodness for that. The report claimed, this bogus report claimed that the pause or the slowdown in global warming in the period since 1998 never existed, and that world temperatures had been rising faster than scientists expected. In other words, up until this report came out, there hadn't been any warming, and the climate change people were alarmed. This report says the fact that there was no warming was a mistake, that there was no pause, that record heat breaking had continued to happen when everybody thought there was no warming taking place. And they said instead of the fact that no warming took place, that in fact temperatures have been rising faster than anybody expected. And this report was launched by NOAA with a huge PR fanfare. It was splashed across the world's media, cited repeatedly by politicians and policymakers. But the whistleblower, Dr. John Bates, a top NOAA scientist with an impeccable reputation, has shown the Daily Mail on Sunday irrefutable evidence that the paper was based on misleading and unverified data. They made it up. Just exactly what happened with the email chains and threads at the University of East Anglia in the UK. The report that was submitted to scientists and world leaders before the Paris meeting was never subjected to rigorous internal evaluation, the kind that this whistleblower himself had devised. This is the old peer review. They had not run the new report by anybody to let them review it to make sure that it was right. It was not evaluated. Somebody just wrote it up and submitted it. Dr. Bates' vehement objections to the publication of the faulty data were overridden. He objected at the time. He said, you can't do this. You can't do this. We're lying. It isn't right. But his superiors at NOAA overrode his objections in what he says is a blatant attempt to intensify the impact of what became known as the Pause-Buster paper. Again, the Pause-Buster paper is the paper presented to people like Obama and others before the Paris meeting to say, you know what, that pause that we think we've had for 15 years, it actually hasn't been a pause. We have been setting heat records these last 15 years. We need to act even faster than we ever knew. It was all lies. There was no truth to it. The whistleblower's disclosures are likely to stiffen President Trump's determination to enact his pledges to reverse Obama's green policies and withdraw from the Paris deal. In an exclusive interview, Dr. Bates accused the lead author of the paper, somebody named Thomas Carl, who was until last year director of the NOAA section that produces climate data. He had accused the lead author of the paper of insisting on decisions and scientific choices that maximized warming and minimized proof in an effort to discredit the notion of a pause. It was rushed so quickly so he could time the publication to influence national and international deliberations on climate policy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I really am not. I'm not trying to sound braggadocious, or this does not surprise. I think this whole movement is fraudulent because I don't think that they can accurately tell us what global temperatures were in the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s. It's just not possible. The tree trunk data, tree ring data, ice core, it's all made up stuff to be beyond our ability to comprehend. They're scientists. They wear the white coats. We, therefore, believe them. The fact of the matter is it has been much warmer previous times on Earth than it is today. That cuts against every theory they've got about industrialization and burning of fossil fuels creating CO2. But even before you even get to that, this whole thing is bogus to me because I don't believe that we human beings are capable of doing what we are being accused of doing. Because if we were, we would be able to stop the process. By the way, and I'm not convinced that the warming is bad, even if it is happening. And we know it is. The climate is never constant. You know, the big question for me, folks, is one about the vanity and the arrogance of all this. These people in the scientific community promoting this hoax have got everybody believing that the temperatures and the climate and everything as of this moment in the history of the Earth is what's normal. And any deviation from the present is a crisis. Well, how do we know this? How do we know what normal? You know, ice ages have lasted 10, 20, hundreds of years, and they ended. How did they end? What caused the ice to melt way back when, before there was fossil fuel? Way before there was humanity living lives of progress. What ended ice ages? What brought about warming areas when we weren't doing anything to cause it? Answer is, it's way beyond our pay scale. We just simply don't have the ability to do this. And the evidence is, they ought to, to show you how inept they are, we supposedly have had a pause. This is how stupid they are, folks. Listen to me. Look at me. We supposedly had a pause for 15 years. During those 15 years, why didn't they say, see, our research is working. See, our suggestions are working. Our reduction of CO2, our elimination of SUVs, our increased usage on electric car, whatever, is working. We need to do more of this. Why did they greet the pause as a problem instead of looking at it, wow, we can say we're succeeding. We can say that we're on the right track. We need to double down on the kind of restrictions we've already. They're so stupid politically, they didn't even realize an opportunity to claim success and credit. They saw a pause as Panic City. I'm telling you, folks, this is the biggest bunch of fraud, one of the biggest hoaxes that has been perpetrated on a free people in I don't know when. And here's Eric in Armada, Michigan. Great to have you. Really glad you waited, Eric. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great, Rush, and I hope you and your family are too.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, when I watched that game last night, and I'm a Packer fan, and of course I was rooting against Atlanta to begin with because what they did to us. But anyway, they started talking bad about, Tom Brady. I'm thinking, wait a minute, he's a 6th-round draft pick.
Wait, who started talking? Wait, who was talking bad about Brady?
Oh, just I guess the people that were they're the pro Atlanta people. I mean, they were looking at the record and how Matt Ryan had got MVP on the league and all that. Anyway, they were babbling on. I'm thinking he's a 6th-round draft pick. He was a mediocre quarterback in Michigan, so he wasn't really expected to go anywhere. But that's the American dream. The American spirit is to not be expected to do something and to achieve greatness. And I will say this, like I said, I'm a Packer fan, but he is the best quarterback right now. And that's all
I think Brady's the best quarterback ever. I don't care how you measure it. I don't care how you measure it. There's nobody can make a claim to being a better quarterback than Brady. He's had a differing wide character of wide receivers. The Steelers' great teams are all units stay together basically 3-4 years, standing with the Fortiners in Montana. But you're right, he is the epitome of a part of America that many people don't like anymore. Half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Donald Trump was at CENTCOM today. He left the winter White House at Mar-a-Lago and flew to Tampa, which is where McDill is, before he's on his way back to Washington. And I wanted you to grab soundbite 25. I didn't get the transcript, but I know what this is. Trump addressed the military that's an Air Force base, and he addressed them, well, it's also CENTCOM, but he addressed them about his executive order and the importance of vetting, and I want you to listen to it.
We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, and we will not allow it to take root in our country. We're not going to allow it. You've been seeing what's been going on over the last few days. We need strong programs so that people that love us and want to love our country and will end up loving our country are allowed in. Not people that want to destroy us and destroy our country.
Now, I'll tell you what's great about that.
Freedom, security, and justice will prevail.
That's real people. That's the men and women at CENTCOM, the United States military, who know well what we're up against. This whole executive order of Trump's has been mischaracterized as bigoted toward religions that Trump doesn't like, bigoted toward religions that are not associated with the founding of America. And that would be Islam. And there's nothing religious. This is not a religious ban. This is the way, in my humble opinion, that the Trump Justice Department defeats this stay, this temporary injunction on the implementation of executive. By the way, this judge, when you get right now, this judge does not have the legal power to do what he did because he is interpreting Trump's state of mind. If you read the judicial opinion that orders the temporary stay from the judge, this Judge Robart guy in Seattle, he doesn't even address the law of this. He just addresses typical left-wing touchy-feely things and then presumes to understand the president's state of mind. And he presumes to understand the president's prejudices and biases. even Alan Dershowitz, who doesn't agree with Trump about anything but is a constitutional scholar, said that Trump could have ignored this. Trump could have just told a guy to go pound sand. But Dershowitz even said that the president has too much respect for the legal system to openly defy a judge like this, that they're going to go through the process of trying to get this stay of his executive order overturned so that it can be re-implemented. It's not about banning Muslims. It's about vetting terrorists. It's not about religion. This is the thing that the left has been allowed to frame this and characterize this via the protesters and the rioters working in consort with the media. And the Trump people sit there and think, oh, they've done a great thing. This is what we were elected to do. People are going to love it. And then these people begin protesting within minutes of this executive order. They fill up LAX. They fill up JFK. They make it look like the whole country's fit to be tied over this. And then they mischaracterize it as a ban on Muslims and a bigoted religious ban. And they say America's never had a religious test, which we have, by the way. Just not the way you think or the way it sounds. But we've always asked refugees their religion when they claim they're fleeing religious persecution. We have to know what their religion is. We have to be able to verify what they're saying. You can't just show up and say, I'm from San Cordoba, and there is religious persecution, and I want to be into America. Okay, fine. Come on in. That's not how it works. First thing, where is San Cordoba? Well, San Cordoba is wherever I happen to be on that day. Fine. What kind of religious strife is going on there? It's the kind of religious strife that does not let me practice my religion. Well, what is your religion? You're not allowed to ask me that. I know that's because George Soros told me. It's not that way. We do it all the time, and we have done it all the time. Here's the problem, folks. And this judge, again, just to rehash, they love saying to Judge, is it Robart or Hobart? These names have similar sounding. It's Judge. Well, Robart or Hobart. It's Robart. Guy, they say, hey, he's a great judge. You guys, he was appointed by George W. Bush. Doesn't mean anything. He was chosen by Patty Murray. Look, I don't have time to get into how these judge things work. Federal district judges, a lot of horse trading going on. She has praised this guy. This is the judge that praised Black Lives Matter in a lawsuit out in Seattle. This is a guy sympathetic to Black lives. This is an activist leftist judge. Now, here is the problem. This case, the next stage will be briefs filed and then arguments at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's the most liberal circuit, appellate circuit in the fruited plain. The Supreme Court right now has 8 justices, and they're split down the middle. You got 4 libs, 3 conservatives, and Anthony Kennedy, who is thought to vote with the conservatives on something like this. So 4-4. In the event of a 4-4 decision at the U.S. Supreme Court, the case reverts to the prior court and its holding. So if the Ninth Circuit upholds Judge Robart and claims that Trump's constitutional or executive order is illegal, and the court, it goes over the Supreme Court and they find 4-4, sorry, Trump's executive order is found to be unconstitutional. Ninth Circuit would be the final stop along the way since Supreme Court deadlocks. That's why we make tracks and confirm Gorsuch, which the Democrats will drag their feet on and try to stop. But again, this is another classic where what's being reported in the drive-by media about this is not true. Again, Dershowitz. Trump is showing respect for an independent judiciary. He could have easily ignored Robart. He could have just told a judge in legal terms to pound sand and maintained, because the law is on Trump's side. Federal statutory law made by Congress is on Trump's side to make these determinations during these such times. A federal judge cannot overturn Trump and things like that. Now, a federal judge did overturn Obama because Obama was acting outside federal law. Trump is not. Yeah, but Obama was held back by a judge and you applauded that. Different case entirely. But their argument has to be the Trump DOJ, when they go before the Ninth Circuit, they have to say this is entirely about assessing the threat posed by refugees and illegal immigrants coming in from these 7 countries. It isn't about religion. That has to be the legal side they pursue. Back after this, folks. Don't go away. Okay, so the Senate has begun the process, or Wilson, of delaying the vote on Betsy DeVos, the education secretary. This is all about teachers' unions, folks. And the problem here is Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, who apparently got a lot of donations from teachers' union donors, have announced they're not going to vote for her, which takes away the 2-seat Republican majority. So if things don't change, and the Democrats are trying to change them, it goes 50-50, and that means Mike Pence would break the tie. The Democrats are trying to delay this. This is all about the left trying to maintain control of public education, of the current people ruining it. The current people that use it as an indoctrination training camp rather than education institutions. The public school system, the people that have overseen the dilapidated destruction of this are desperately trying to hold on to it. Betsy DeVos wants to wrest control from the teachers' union. She has to be stopped. The Democrats are doing everything. They want her to be the Trump cabinet nominee that doesn't make it. They're throwing up all the stops. Thomas Sowell has a great piece on this that I'll have to get to tomorrow. The New York Post has an editorial today. Delaying Trump's tax cuts is a huge risk. This is a big deal to people. There's news out there today. Even that Trump said Obamacare might not be repealed until next year, 2018. And people are getting nervous. I know people that voted for Trump, who voted for Trump not because of trade deals, not because of NAFTA, and not because of vetting of the bad people. They voted Trump because they want tax cuts, corporate and personal, and they want Obamacare repealed. And they're not hearing much about it, and they're not seeing anything on it, and they're getting nervous. And the New York Post apparently is. So what I thought I would do, I wanted to go back and find out the Reagan tax cuts of the model. Reagan took office January 1981. The first phase of Reagan tax cuts passed Congress August 4th, 1981. Took 8 months. They were signed into law on August 13th. The Bush tax cuts, he had some too. They were passed by Congress May 23rd. 2001, signed by Bush on June the 7th. We think Trump's moving slow, but not according to history. Obamacare, that's another thing. Republicans, it's clear they don't want to touch it still. That's obvious. As every Monday is, we are off to a rousing start for the week. We are of sound mind, of great voice, and eminent creativity, and we look forward to much more of that tomorrow. Thanks so much for being with us today, folks. Be back here at 21 hours.